Dipanvita Barua to take it further and introduce our presenter. So Dipanvita, over to you.
Yeah. Hi everyone, this is Dipanvita, your workshop moderator for the day. And today we have here with us architect Vaibhav Agrawal from Dehradun, who happens to be a friend of mine. Now, he may seem quite young, but he has experience of working on some prestigious projects with some renowned architects in India, like architect Pradeep Sachdeva in Delhi and architect Prasanna Desai in Pune. Presented today is an environmentally conscious human being. He has taken some small steps to manage his carbon footprint by growing his own food and managing his own waste. Let's hear his journey and what has inspired him to do so. Yes, Vaibhav, please go ahead.
You left it. Okay. Hi everyone. I'm graduated in architecture, but like many architects or my fellow friends, I'm still figuring out what to do with my life. Architecture doesn't give the entire meaning. So this lockdown phase was the time when I started with this urban farming thing on my terrace. So I've been researching on it for past 6 months before the lockdown began. That would be since November 2019. So after a short period of research, I practically applied what I had, and that is what I'll be sharing with you guys. So urban farming, what, why, and how. What is it? Why do it? And how to do it? I hope to answer these questions in the following slides. So what? Okay, so a human being, Homo sapien, he's always known to grow his own. The first agricultural revolution in 8th century. So he would find a water source, build a habitat, and grow various crops. Then he eventually found a way to take water farther apart from its source, and hence he expanded his civilizations. Then gradually and slowly, not all the households were growing their own, for they could borrow it or buy it from the neighbors who would have it in abundance, and that was all right. And even if we do it today, that would be all right. But then began the tragedy where we had a drastic separation between our rural and urban areas, and there would be nobody producing food in urban areas, and all the pressure would end up being in rural villages. And it's a big problem, and we'll discuss it why. So what is farming? Nothing new. It's just a fancy term coined for an age-old practice of growing food ourselves where we live. We just happen to live these, so we need to bring back the culture of knowing and growing a food. That is all urban farming is. Old concept packaged in a new fancy wrapper. Why take all this burden at all, right? So I'll give you something that would hit you right in your gut. What does your stomach look like? I want you guys to answer. Anybody?
Looks like a bag or a
Like a bean.
Yeah,
yeah,
the
like a bean.
option A, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the beaker, and that is where you put in the chemicals, not your stomach. And sadly enough, all the food that we buy from our mandis, our supermarkets, it's all coated with chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which we can live on eating. But if you want to live maybe say another 10 years longer than you usually would, start growing your own food, or at least start eating organic. So with the advent of 20th century began the third agricultural revolution, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and monoculture basically, where acres and acres of land would be used to cultivate a single crop. And anybody who's remotely familiar with agriculture would know when you do monoculture, it's heavily infested with pest and diseases. So one has to use pesticide to control it. So that is where we began growing up food using chemicals and start losing touch with our nature and the organic ways of doing it. That would kill our ecosystem in the soil, and eventually, who knows, end up killing us all. Another reason why you should, and this would be interesting, have you ever had this feeling when you went to buy some broccoli or a fancy exotic vegetable and felt like you'll have to sell one of your kidneys to buy it? Maybe or maybe not. I've been there at least. So if you grow it, pick any exotic vegetable, you just have to pick the right conditions to grow it, and you can grow it for dirt cheap, trust me. Then something that's important for me at least, if you grow your own food, it has no to minimal carbon miles, because it's not growing miles away. It's right on your terrace or your balcony or your backyard where you just harvest it and eat it directly. But when you buy it from the market, which is the usual case, the food is grown in outskirts of the city or some rural areas, then is which is fueled with fossil fuels, spends a whole lot of energy, and then reaches your house. So again, if you grow it, it means you will be eating it when you need it, right? You'll harvest it as you need it. So fresh food has much higher nutrition density by many researchers. This presentation won't have many facts to prove uh, my points. You can easily Google it. It's a very layman's presentation. So there are many researches that prove that the nutrition density of any fruit is reduced by at least 40% when it travels through this entire journey from villages to city. Also, if you grow it yourself, it's fresh AF, no need to tell, pretty obvious. And also sweet, tender, and tasty. This is a photograph from my own terrace garden. These were the corn cobs I grew last month. Sweetest tasting sweet corns I've had. Also, the biggest reason why I do it that trumps everything else is because it makes me happy. And I think anybody who does it would find happiness in it. Now, how to do it? How to do it in a time when we have no space in our cities, right? And the land prices. So you've already sold one of your kidneys to buy that broccoli. To buy a piece of land, you'll have to sell your family's kidneys and extended family's kidneys. Not a very practical idea. And also, somehow, if you manage to buy a small piece of land, you'll eventually find out the soil quality poor, that it would take years of amendment to be fertile. So let's rethink that. That shouldn't be enough to demotivate us. So what do plants grow? Soil, water, sunlight, space. That is what we've been taught. Not taught actually. I wish agriculture was taught in schools, but this is what we've heard, right? But it's not entirely right. Let's rephrase it. We don't really need soil to grow plants. It might come across as a revolution, but we really don't. We need a growing medium, which in conventional agriculture happens to be soil, which has to be enriched with nutrients. Then water is undisputed life source, which is right. Then again, we don't need the sunlight. What we need is spectrum, which I'll explain ahead what it is. Then we'll definitely need space, but we need to give it a lot less than we usually prescribe to. So growing media and nutrients. When we grow food in our soil, which is a conventional farming method, we're not technically growing it in sand or clay. It has a entire ecosystem of micro and macroorganisms, which makes the soil living, and they feed the soil with nutrients as they decompose the organic matter, and that is what grows the plants, not clay or sand. The other alternative, not the promoted alternative, is to enrich in your soil with chemical fertilizers, which might give a good few years, but eventually kills the soil and kills your plants. Water. A human body comprises of 70 to 75% of water, plus 80 to 90% water. So no compromise when we talk about water. About spectrum, we all remember Vibgyor, right? We were taught about it in standard 8 or 7th, I don't know. So basically, the white light, which is of the sun, if passed through a prism, has 7 zones of spectrum, Vibgyor. And this chart on the right shows locally active radiation. So this is the part of the spectrum that plants really needs to grow. It doesn't need the white light. It actually needs the blue and the red zone, which is where active. So there are many artificial ways of providing this spectrum to plants if you're growing indoors or even if you're growing outdoors but need supplementary. About the space. So whenever you Google how far you should plant your plants, say broccoli or cabbage or carrots, it's usually in context to monoculture. And monoculture, like I mentioned before, is done on acres and acres of land, which is to be handled with machinery and bigger tools. But when you grow your own food, which usually would be very small scale, you don't need those heavy machinery. So you can cramp up your pot closer than what you would find on Google. This is something that I refer to. It's a legendary book by Mel Bartholomew, All New Square. It is perfect way to start for a beginner gardener, and this is what gave me my initial steps to plant my plants. This is what square foot partner gardening advocates. You divide your entire planting space into 1 by 1 feet of squares, and then you would have a prescription in the book how many number of plants you can grow in one each square foot. Like you can grow one tomato plant in 1 square foot, but you can grow 16 carrots in the same square foot. So it's very effective use of space. You can grow a lot more than what you can grow conventionally, even with chemicals. So now we have our water, growing media and nutrients, spectrum and space. There, and tada, here you have your own urban garden. This is a photograph of my terrace garden, which was taken about 2 months back, and native growth is just 1.1.5 month old. So this is how dense the vegetation can get if you get these things right. The growing medium. So what I practice is soilless farming. I don't use soil at all. I use reasons because soil brings pathogens and diseases, and also it's a lot heavier. And since my planting zone is my terrace, I wanted to avoid increasing the dead load on my terrace. So this is coco peat, which is luckily in abundance in India, which it's really expensive outside of India. But since we have so many coconut plants in India, it's dirt cheap here. Trust me. So it comes in forms of compressed bricks, and as you put it in water, it expands to form a slurry, and then you can mix it with other elements to make your potting mix. The next component is perlite, which is a naturally occurring volcanic rock, which is formed when obsidian is saturated with volcanic lime. So it's extremely eco-friendly and non-biodegradable, and also sterile. So it doesn't bring in any diseases. And what it does is it makes our potting mix and allows the roots to breathe, and it doesn't let the potting mix compact over years, which is a big problem when you grow in containers. So we have our growing media, but we need to put in the nutrients. I can choose to put in the chemical fertilizers, but I know better to not. So what I use is vermicompost or compost. Vermicompost I had to buy it from the market because I cannot produce enough myself. But what you see on right is my homemade compost from my kitchen waste, which is as good as vermicompost when you put it to your potting mix to feed your soil. So this is what the potting mix looks like when you mix in the three ingredients. It's extremely porous. Coco peat helps retain the moisture in the potting mix. Perlite helps to make it porous and breathable. And vermicompost gives it that ecosystem of living organisms that feeds the plant. Starting from seed, I choose to start my plants from seed for many reasons, because it gives me full control of how I grow it. Buying transplants from a nursery could quicken the process, but I would never know if the initial stages of the plants were subjected to chemicals and pesticides. So I go an extra mile to start everything from seeds. Once I have these transplants ready, I can transplant them into my beds, which is better because once plants have grown to a stage, they become more resistant to diseases and pests. Some seeds, however, should be sown directly into the mix, which sorry could not be covered in this half an hour presentation. So this is the design of the container. Being an architect really helped me during the entire process. I could do sun stimulations to see what part of my terrace would receive, to what height I can grow plants and how I should grow them. So this is the design of the container, very simple and very basic, and it doesn't have to be complicated. So this is the basic design of the container and how I plant my plants. It's a 3 feet by 6 feet container in plan. So it has basically 18 square feet of space. And since I follow square foot gardening, I have 18 squares to plant my plants. So the first row is to grow all my height plants and root plants, then follows medium height plants, and then follows vines and tall plants. And it faces directly in the south direction. So at any time of day, the entire container and the containers that go parallel to it receive at least 6 hours of sun, and some the front rows receive over 12 hours of sun and sun. So this is what the garden looked like while I was still setting it up. I put in some shade net because we live in the tropics and really hot. So it's better to put in some shading device in for months of June and July when the sun is really harsh. So where food? The options are limitless. These are only few of the options you can innovate with. You can grow it on your rooftop. Trust me. So you can grow it on your rooftop. People I learned from do. You can grow it in your backyards or gardens. You can even grow it in basements, and you can grow it indoors and in your closet. These are relatively newer ideas, but they are still very successful. How to do it? Just Google grow lights and hydroponics. We can maybe have another presentation to discuss it in detail, but for now you can do your homework. So why grow organic? Why and how again? What is organic? Why grow it and how to grow it? Again, it's again a fancy term for an age-old practice of growing our food in sync with nature. We've always known to grow organically. It was only the industrial revolution that brought in the industries and they brought in the chemicals. Otherwise, we've always grown our food. So I think that's proof enough that we don't really need chemicals to grow our food. We've thrived and we've become a population of over 7 million without using chemicals. So how do we grow organically? How do we feed our soil with nutrients? Poop is our best option. Human poop is not very very nutrients though, but horses, chickens, cows, rabbits, earthworms, their poop is the plants and the soil, they love their poop. Decompose as it decomposes, it releases nutrients in abundance, and that feeds the plant. All my plants that I grow are nutrient rich using vermicompost, which is earth treater. And from my experience, I can reinforce that they grow pretty successfully. I have no reason to use chemicals, honestly. So poop can any day kick chemicals in the balls. Why grow organic? Again, we already answered it, right? B is where you put in the chemicals, not your stomach. Hmm. And also, again, a very relevant point for me, it's way better for the environment. As you can see it on the left, or growing organically completes a cycle. The plant feeds us, the animal poop feeds the plant. But when you chemicals which are produced in a factory and then transported to a city, and then you feed your plants, the cycle never completes. And the waste that could have been used to feed your plants in a landfill, which is not still a layman's problem, but it very soon will be. So it's important we start taking charge of our waste. How to grow organic? You can always buy some compost at a garden center. Just go to a nursery, go to a garden shop. It might take a little browsing, but you'll be able to find vermicompost or some ordinary garden compost. You can source it from a local dairy if you want to go an extra mile and save you would spend on buying it from a garden center. Take the gobar from a dairy, which they have in abundance and they don't need it. Decompose it and use it to feed your plants. Or what you can do is make your own compost like I do. This is again a pic of my compost bin, which is before and after over a span of 3 months. Home composting, that brings us to home composting. So what can go into your compost? Pretty much everything that was once alive, that came from plant, came from anything that held life. Eggshells, kitchen peels, dogs, human ears, coffee grounds, anything that basically once lived can go into your comp to give life again. But that you might begin to wonder that why don't landfills eventually make up compost, because it's a pile of living material, right? Because it's a little trickier than just piling up your kitchen waste. You also have to mix in the browns. So the greens, kitchen waste, animal manure, and garden waste are nitrogen rich components, and you have to balance it with browns, the carbons, which are dried leaves, paper, cardboard, sawdust, hay, straw. So basically, you have to build a lasagna in your compost bin, a layer of brown, a layer of green. It's as simple as that. If you research on it more, it might get a little overwhelming. The recommendations are that you balance a ratio of 1 is to 30, 1 is nitrogen, 30 is carbon, and you have to mix a certain proportions of each. But I've researched it that way, I've done it this way, and it works. So you just build a lasagna of green and brown. You can buy some hay straw from a market or some sawdust from any mill. Every morning, put in take a bin, pull pierce some holes, and then just put in your kitchen waste, cover it with brown. Next day, put in your cover waste and cover it with brown. As simple as that. Or even if you want to make it the process, if you want to make it even simpler, Google Daily Dump. There's an amazing work where they give these modular composting bins, and they have an entire manual and ready mix brown material that you can put over your to ready your compost. Urban farming and architecture. Like I said, being an architect really helped me in planning my garden. I'm sure an engineer would use his expertise to do it and would do it easily, but as an architect, I was glad that I had this 5 year based knowledge to understand the sun, to understand the soil, and to understand the space. So we've very basic role to play as architects, which I think any citizen can. You and I can be advocates of growing our food if you are convinced that we should. It's it's just as simple as that. When you deal with a client, you can put forth an idea that growing your own food is a practical option in city, and hence you should do it. The other reason is the other way of doing it is we should further push to invest his money in building terraces, gardens, balconies, and kitchens which can accommodate growing food, which can which would have the terraces and balconies facing the directions, the south ideally, that would receive enough sun to grow all varieties of food. And we can build, like we build septic tanks to deal with a sewer. We should make this a wide practice to make receptacles for our composting. We should do not need to buy compost bins or any product from the market to compost our kitchen waste. We should have some receptacles where we can put in our kitchen waste and cover them with browns, and in a month's time we would have our compost ready. So as architects, I think we can do a lot. And that is the end of the presentation. We are open for a Q&A. Anybody interested can come up with their questions.
Yes. Vaibhav, I have a question. Right.
Yeah.
So for quite a long time, I've been trying to grow thyme and all those herbs in my kitchen, right? So just want to ask you,
Okay.
do I need to put external photosynthesis light also?
Do you by any chance know which direction your kitchen windows face?
East.
East. So they would only receive 3 hours of sun, I'm guessing.
No, वो भी नहीं, because I live in a place where जहाँ पे सूरज आता ही नहीं है.
Okay,
आसपास
now
सब घर
then
है.
you'll definitely need to put in a grow light. which
Yes.
you can easily Google and you'll find you can also
Yeah,
buy
it's
from them.
available on Amazon. I was just looking up it.
Yeah,
And do
yeah,
do these herbs have a particular season? I mean, thyme, rosemary.
yeah. They actually thrive better in climates. But since
Okay.
you're growing indoors, I think you should be able to regulate the climate. They're very hardy herbs.
Right.
I'm growing some myself this winter.
Okay.
So it will be first time for me also. But yes, they are very hardy. They don't die easily once you grow
Right.
them, of course.
Right. Right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So there's a question from he's asking, can we practically grow hydroponics and aquaponics in Delhi? How viable it is economically?
Economical, if your intention is to take it commercially, the initial cost is definitely a lot more. Hydroponics is something that I'm also interested in and would do eventually. But yeah, the initial setup cost is a lot more than the soil based or the growing media based technique. But since you have a better control of your harvest and pest and disease, eventually the returns are also better once you've identified the market. If you want to grow it for your domestic consumption, it might be a little heavy on your pocket, but at least you yourself. So I think it's worth it.
So it is answered, Yogesh ji. Okay, so question from Supreet Kaur. She's asking, what is
Yeah.
the ideal depth of gardening beds and what kind of wood is preferred?
Okay, so more into depth, provided that your potting mix is nutrient rich enough. So what basically plants, the roots try to do is, if they don't find enough nutrients in that depth, they tend to, so in hope that they would find some nutrients. But if you have a 12-inch deep potting mix, which is enriched with nutrients, you don't need any more than that. You can, I grew corn in 12 inches of soil, which I think is a proof enough that should be enough. And my corn grew over 10 feet tall, still held it pretty strong. Sorry, was there a follow-up question?
What kind of wood is preferred?
Yeah, so you don't them in wood necessarily or containers. You can use bricks, you can use metal, get them fabricated. And if you're using wood, I've built mine using eucalyptus dry wood. So any wood would do as long as then it's dried and seasoned well. I wouldn't recommend using plyboards or high boards because those are chemically processed and those chemicals leach into your potting mix.
So Supreet, it's answered.
Yes, he's answered it very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Rituji, you can ask.
या आजकल हमने वैभव जी बहुत सुना है ग्रीन बिल्डिंग कॉन्सेप्ट्स.
Yeah.
Is it related to this?
See, growing plants in a building doesn't make it green. But if you grow your own food, green buildings are, why do we green buildings? We do it to make the building environmental friendly, and growing your own food is environmental friendly. So growing some vegetation in a building doesn't make it. The building has to be well designed. The building has to have a lower carbon footprint. But in general, growing your own food is a green practice and should be promoted.
And also say that both are like practice under the sustainable architecture. You can say sustainable, both are sustainable practices.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Puneet ji has some question. Do we need to get waterproofing for the terrace farming?
I think most of our terraces are anyways done with the waterproofing. My father insisted that we get waterproofed again, though I was convinced we don't need to, because the design of my container is as such, any extra water that would seep out of the container have enough space to flow from the terrace to the drain, because the containers are an inch above from the ground, so they're not exactly in contact with my terrace. So I don't know, if you already have dampness issues, you might get it done, but it's not the necessary thing to do.
Okay. Here's a question from Dipanshi. She's asked to pose to grow food on the terrace for our canteen food. How much area is required and what will be cost and which plant crops we can grow?
Who's this? Who's asking the question?
Dipanshi Chaudhary.
Yeah, hi Dipanshi. Sorry, Dipanshi, but your question doesn't really have a very black and white answer. What region you are living in, for how many people you are trying to grow, and what techniques you are using. So basically, a very standard way of uh, uh, figuring out how much space a family of 4 would need is every 8 by 4 feet of bedding space produces 70 kgs of vegetables per year. But again, it's a very, very generalized way of speaking it. So I hope you can do your calculations and figure out, depending on your terrace area, how much vegetable you would be able to produce, considering assuming that a person would daily consume say 1 to 1.5 kg of vegetables 3 meals.
Seemaji has raised hand. Seemaji, you want to ask?
Hi. So my not a technical question per se. I stay in an apartment building, okay, and we have the terrace. So here the issue is that we have a very major issue vis-a-vis squirrels. Don't you try to put up any plant, and you try to go green? Basically, there is this very major issue of the squirrels coming and destroying. So are there any specific plants which can kind of keep squirrels, etc., away, or it's something that we kind of have to deal with?
Okay, so I'm not pretty sure if there are specific plants that would drive away the squirrels, but what I know is there are definitely some plants that attract squirrels. So
okay,
can have a change of viewpoint. I wouldn't even call it sacrifice, but we can dedicate a part of our terrace where we grow food that would squirrels,
the squirrels,
and rest
right.
of the terrace would be, the rest of the terrace would be for us.
Right.
So the nature has always existed with all these animals, right? They've not devoured all
Absolutely.
the
Yeah. So it's always, I mean, you're definitely, kind of building an ecology there. So I do understand, but it is always leading to, because I'm not a very great, I do not have say. So whenever I make that little effort, it leads to this, and then you're kind of demotivated. Ki chalo, rehne do, kind of a thing.
I don't let it demotivate you. What you can otherwise gauge around your plants that would help it protect from the monkeys or the squirrels.
The squirrels, etc.
But the better way would be to give them a space of their own to feed them.
Space where own system happening. Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so Preet is asking, when buying seeds, desi or hybrid varieties do better?
Better. Again, depends what your viewpoint is. Growing hybrid seeds is definitely easier, and it's also claimed they produce much better harvest. And I have also grown with hybrid seeds for last 3 months, and I'll be growing the next season with hybrid seeds. But I really want to transition into growing desi seeds, which are called heirloom seeds, for the reason that it's again more environmental friendly. I cannot grow seeds from this season for the next season if I grow from hybrid seeds. So basically a hybrid seed is a genetic mutation of say seed 1 and seed. And when you save a seed from the fruit of that tree or plant, when you plant it next season, the fruit could either go to could either be of variety A or a variety B. So every time you grow from hybrid seeds, you'll have to buy new seeds to get the variety that the hybrid seeds promise. Seed saved hybrid variety doesn't grow the same quality of food, but heirloom grow the same variety of food every year as you save the seeds. So eventually I want to transition into growing heirloom varieties as I gain in more experience.
Is there also difference in nutrition between the two varieties?
No, not really. But a lot of hybrid seeds, in fact, all the hybrid seeds are patented by some corporations. And that's another conversation why people advocate growing heirloom seeds, because the farmers of our country have always saved our seeds and grown them next season. But when a corporation or a bigger company patents the same variety and the farmer is not allowed to save it for himself, he'll have to buy it from the corporation. So that is why growing heirloom variety is advocated. But the nutrition level is the same.
It could be a trick question also. She herself is a landscape designer.
Okay. Oh,
Not a
hi.
question. I was just wondering because these days there's a bit of heirlooms to it's growing your own variety. They also claim that growing wheat varieties which were really old and not hybrid, they're very high in folic acid. Maize wheat does not have any nutrients other than carbohydrates. So I was just wondering, is it a sustainable concept? Because I myself haven't tried it.
It doesn't really have to be true. It could be true variety to variety. But what everybody claims, and I want to test it myself, is heirloom varieties taste much better because they have the original taste of what are grand to eat, and now we've mutated the flavors.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So Tejinder ji is asking, what are the best plants for terrace gardening?
You can pretty much grow everything except for fruit trees because they need a lot more soil depth. But like I said, I grew some maize, I grew cucumber vines, I even pumpkins vertically. So I think you can pretty much grow everything except for fruit trees.
And Dipanshi is asking, what should be the indoor environment be like?
Indoor environment. Yeah. So again, basically you need to provide them enough space to grow, spectrum, water, and medium. If you go hydroponics, you definitely need a grow light, some chemical nutrients which are mixed into the water that circulates and feed the plant. If you are growing using a growing media with a compost, again you can put your same pot or a container under a grow light and have to grow it the same way as you would grow outside.
Amit Ji is asking, doesn't vermicompost have the same pathogens like in soil? Why shouldn't we prefer soil?
No, see what makes soil capable of growing the food is vermicompost technically, because earth already has a system of earth forms that feed off leaves and foliage. So the vermicompost doesn't have pathogens, first of all, the soil does. And even in soil, what allows the plants to grow is vermicompost, other degraded matter. So it's one and the same thing. What we call soil is a mix of clay, sand, and vermicompost or manure or humus. What I'm doing in my practice is taking out clay and sand and directly putting the vermicompost and the manure in another pot, growing media, which is sterile and gen resistant.
Okay, but if there is like you said, animal poop is a good nutrient.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it good to have that? We don't have any pathogens from that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Firoz Khan ji is asking, what are the ideal vegetables to grow in this season?
In what season, what part of the country you live in?
Firoz ji can ask.
Yeah, Delhi.
Delhi, so it would be winters. So grow a lot of leafy greens, salad mixes. What I am growing this season is a lot of broccoli, kale, Swiss chard, lettuces, varieties of lettuces, bok, palak, dhania, methi. I'm actually growing over 15 vegetables. These are what comes to my mind. You can basically grow a lot of leafy vegetables, cauliflowers, cabbages. Is that fine?
Are these easy to grow?
What?
Are these easy to grow? Like they don't need much effort?
All the plants need effort, so sorry. But yeah, they're winter vegetables are relatively easier to grow than summer vegetables. We have a lot less pests and diseases in winters. They grow a lot shorter compared to summer plants. But yeah, they'll still need your attention.
We have a question. How much time per day? How much time per?
Sorry.